What's the good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. So we've been looking a little crazy here, but Locke's coming back soon, so profile pic will finally match the real life image again. But that aside, New York Jets versus Carolina Panthers joint practice number one. Now this was the heavier day. So there was lots of excitement, naturally, of course, facing a new team for the first time. Interesting dynamic seeing Bryce Young versus what should have been a very strong secondary. We'll talk about some of the absences across the board. But overall, good defense versus good defense. At least an interesting offense in Carolina. I don't really want to undermine things, but obviously two offenses that aren't necessarily as established as some of the top tier ones in the league, but definitely could make some noise out here. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the specifics. The biggest come away from this entire practice, I would say, is that there were no injuries on the New York Jets front. At least I can't, confirm anything for the Panthers, but we walked out of this unscathed, which is absolutely phenomenal for us, especially considering some of the recent history with some of the big players that went down with injuries before, such as Carl Lawson. So as far as our big ticket item, Aaron Rodgers, goes, he impressed early on. He went 8 of 10 when we were running through 11-on-11 drills, had a deep pass to Allen Lazard, a touchdown to him as well, a deep pass to CJ Uzomah he was able to complete, and he was able to go out there and cause multiple offside penalties once again. So we're seeing in real time his advanced snap cadence working against the defense and putting us in some very favorable, short yardage situations to try to bring the most out of the playbook and, some of the creative options that we'll have at our disposal with the personnel that we have, at least when all healthy. 3 and out during 2-minute drills near the end of practice. That's we didn't end on the greatest note. Bryce Hall in Carolina definitely had us beat in that regard, and this is one of the aspects of our offensive line not being settled, right? Dwayne Brown still on PUP, but it sounded like we got beat all across the board. We highlighted Derek Brown and Brian Burns as the two main players that are going to, potentially stop our offense and do it consistently. And I think we definitely saw that here. So Derek Brown kind of had a field day against the interior. Now, from a lot of the reports that I've seen, a lot of the video film footage, even from fans that were able to show up, it's really hard to tell based on some of the angles who was at fault. So could have been Connor McGovern, ABT. I'm not sure if Laken Tomlinson is back or if we still have Wes Schweitzer there, but it didn't really matter. First string, second string offensive lines, not the greatest day from them. And as mentioned, Brian Burns feasting, beating Max Mitchell consistently over the course of this first practice. So kudos to them. At least Max Mitchell, you can say you feel good about him walking away improved from experiences like these. But the interior, I thought, would be our bread and butter, and that's kind of what I was hanging my hat on for this off season, is that at least the three main components up front, where you don't want, Aaron Rodgers being attacked, face to face straight up like that. At least with the tackles, even if they're porous, you'd have to go around. He can step up, he can move, he still has the ability to go out there and run, extend plays. You felt good about him being able to mitigate that. But if we do end up coming against a lot of these stronger teams that have quality defensive tackles, that could be a concern. So, something to keep the eye on. Tomorrow's practice is supposed to be a lot lighter, so I'm not sure if we'll get the same quality of, information, reps, all of that kind of good stuff. I'm not sure what the structure will look like, but something to be aware of. Now, run-wise with the offensive line, it wasn't the worst day for us. By far wasn't the best, but it was the pass protection that Aaron Rodgers kind of spoke to and called out. And I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock into the press conference. Generally, he just kind of spoke about the offensive line being unsettled, and ideally, if you can just have one tackle that at least steps up to the plate, then you're talking about having 4 quality offensive linemen for the most part, regardless of how people feel about Tomlinson. Connor McGovern pretty solid player. ABT, you feel all pro potential. Laken Tomlinson should be a Pro Bowl-ish level player. And then whoever out of the tackles steps up will give you at least one of the more complete lines in the NFL. So we'll see how that pans out for us. Bryce Young, he ended up going 5 of 7 during his 2-minute drill. So, as mentioned, he was able to kind of beat us up a little bit there. Completions to 5 different players. That's what I kind of found most interesting on that drive. And, the big piece here is we weren't full, we didn't have a full deck during these joint practices. We had Garrett Wilson, who was active, but he didn't go through team drills. So, we had J.C. Horn against the likes of like Alan Lazard, for example, as opposed to a Garrett Wilson. Carl Lawson, he was still out, dealing with back concerns. And then we had Sauce Gardner, who didn't practice. Salah mentioned that he had some quadriceps discomfort. And so, no need to force the issue and cause him to strain himself further in a setting like this. We know what Sauce Gardner is. We know the quality work he was going to put in. And to be honest, the defense led the way. That was kind of the calling card of the day for both teams. The defense took advantage of every mistake that the offense was going to allow. So we'll kind of get into those highlights here in a moment. But Brian Burns, he was obviously a plus player for the Carolina. On our side, Brandon Echols stepping in for Sauce Gardner. Keep in mind with DJ Reed, it's interesting because we still like to keep him on the right side of the field, I believe it is, where he's most effective, most comfortable. So ideally, of course, DJ Reed would slide in as your number 1, but it's all going to be depending on matchup. So in this case, Brandon Echols becomes Sauce Gardner's immediate replacement. He did pretty solid, got himself an interception, was able to break up a pass as well. We had Tony Adams once again stepping up. He was able to force a fumble that Jamian Sherwood recovered. He had a pass breakup during 2-minute drills. We've seen him step up and make some plays closer to the line of scrimmage. So a lot of people across the board really feel like Tony Adams is going to potentially have like I won't say all pro, but definitely a Pro Bowl top 5, maybe safety, type season this year with what we've seen him do. I mean, there's kind of been no limit, right? We haven't seen a true area of just complete weakness, but we also haven't seen him in legit games outside of the, handful he was able to play last season. But he's definitely taking a lot of that positive influence and momentum. He's carried it into this offseason, and to be honest, he's probably a top 3 player during training camp for us so far. So, Jermaine Johnson, some fights broke out, right? Nothing crazy, but he got into it twice with tight end Hayden Hurst from the Carolina Panthers. So we had a little bit of fire in the fire. It's a hot day out there from my understanding. We had our new signee, Sam Iguavin, I think is what I seen one of you guys quote. He body slammed tight end Steven Sullivan, so I couldn't necessarily find the film for it, but pretty interesting situation there. I believe that may overstep some of the loose boundaries Robert Saleh has about conflicts like this where people are getting into it. As long as nobody got hurt, though, it probably seems like it's fair play because I didn't see anybody talk about it during press conferences. This was one of the days where this was the first training camp practice, or the heaviest practice for the New York Jets in terms of this being the most first team reps that our squad has had, for the entirety of the off season so far. So quality work against an interesting opponent for us, no doubt. Some other last-minute loose ends with some players we might want to know about. We had running back Israel Bandikanda. He was able to break off a couple of chunk plays. Mekhi Becton had himself a solid outing, got himself a pancake block, was in for some other pretty strong plays. Of course, got the occasional guy that kind of was able to imitate Bryce Huff and blow past him a little bit, but he's starting to string together some pretty solid days. And I will say, for this being one of the most heavy practices for us, is worth mentioning that, to my knowledge, Mekhi Becton didn't have to come out, take breathers, any of those kind of conditioning or knee-related situations. Zonovan Knight, he stood out again. He's a guy that continues to stack strong days together, making big plays, doing all of the little things right. From what I recall, I think Michael Nania from Just X Factor, when I was looking at, everything to speak about today, I think he mentioned that Zonovan Knight caught every single pass that came his way. And this was a day that was heavy for tight ends and running backs, with the wide receivers not necessarily blowing anybody away. And then quarterback Zach Wilson, not the strongest day, kind of an up and down situation. And that's, a byproduct of how the offensive line was performing. Interception during 2-minute drill for him. So bunch of strong practices leading up until today. The offense took a pretty much significant-ish step back. But we knew our season was kind of going to be make or break based off the offensive line, as is generally true for every team in the NFL, but more so for the New York Jets, just because of how much we built up the skill position players within this offense. So we'll see how day 2 goes. I did find it interesting, some of the comments from like Connor McGovern mentioning that they wanted to set a tone and all of that kind of stuff. We heard it from the defense. They lived up to their side of expectations. The offensive line, not necessarily so much. I think Connor McGovern, paraphrasing here, mentioned something along the lines of they wanted to set the tone. They got in there, things got cracking, and then they got surprised a little bit, maybe with like the ferocity or violence that the defensive line came through with, and then they were able to kind of pick things up and match energy to energy. So either way, solid day's work. I'll be interested to see how things pan out for the actual preseason game, but one more practice with the Panthers tomorrow, and or at least today by the time you guys are seeing this, and we'll see how things go. But let me know what opinions, thoughts, etc. you guys have, and I'll catch you again. Peace.